Julia Carias. I'm a woman, I guess, an immigrant. Not, I guess, I know. I'm an immigrant, a woman, a warrior. I just, love life. I love people. And I just want to live my best life and leave something positive behind. I want to, I always say I want to leave the world better than what I found it. And so that's in a nutshell who I am.
Nice. So I want to start off with coming for your journey and coming to this country. Where you came from, what was that like for you coming to a new country and you don't know the language, the people? So take us to that journey.
Sure. So I came to this country in the mid 80s, where, if you guys remember New York, for those who don't remember, they were really young, but the ones that do remember, New York was tough at that time. I think that there was a lot of drugs. There was the crack epidemic, right? So I came very young, my parents and my siblings, and we first stopped in Miami, which was great because the weather was great. And then my
There was
mom,
nice drugs over there too, in Miami.
yeah, definitely, absolutely, I'm sure. Right after watching Narcos,
I feel like we're
absolutely,
going back to that.
right. That's how it feels like, right?
Yeah.
So my mom had a sister here in New York,
Okay.
and we came. Ultimately, the stop was New York, and I just remember it was, it was in August of 1984. It was very cold at the time. I just remember the first winter being really cold, and I remember driving. When we were driving, they picked us up from the airport, and I just remember, seeing all these like huge buildings that I had never seen before, only in films and TV. And I just remember, arriving to Yonkers, and it just like looked really dark and dirty. And I was not happy that we had moved. I mean, we lived really, really comfortable in Honduras. I was, just like any other immigrant, right? Just trying to
Find
to
your
adjust.
space.
Yeah, absolutely. And then not speaking the language, and we ended up in Yonkers, and it was an area that was heavily populated by Portuguese, Italians, and then but there were a few Latinos, and then the back of it, of the building where we lived, were the projects, School Street, and so it was very, very different. And I just remember struggling with the language, trying to communicate, trying to assimilate, trying to find a place where you feel comfortable. And as children, I was 10 years old. So as a child, you kind of, you do better, you transition better, I think. And then once we started school, it was a little bit better, but it was tough. And I remember, we came as visitors, and my parents and my siblings, we lost our visa, and so for a while we were undocumented. So I also know that struggle. And my parents, tried to get their status fixed, and it was crazy because they got scammed like 2 times.
Wow.
I know it's kind of crazy, that whole journey, and then they finally, became residents. But for a long time, as a teenager, I was, undocumented, and at that point, I remember, wanting to get the working papers, right?
Yeah.
14 years old, wanting to work, and I remember asking one of my cousin's girlfriends to lend me her paper, and she actually lent me her papers. And I used to work at a shoe store, Baker's in Cross County, and my God, my name was Omani. So every time the manager used to call me, I would never respond to Omani. And then I would remember, and then he would yell, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm here. I remember my friends wanting to visit me, and me having to keep them by the door because I didn't want them to come in and call me Julia. And it was just crazy. It was just, I know. I know, it's like you think about those things. And so for me, now that the topic of immigration is it's dear to my heart. And because I think at the end of the day, we come to this country not to take, but to contribute. And I just think about the struggles where my parents and myself, we always worked. Even in Honduras, we come from a working, very working, hardworking family. And it was just very difficult in the transition, right? My mom was a professional, a teacher in Honduras, and having to transition now to be the cleaning lady, to be, to clean apartments, to clean banks, to clean. So I know the meaning of hard work from a very, very early age. And, you just try to be the best version possible, and really thinking about how much of a sacrifice that was for my parents to leave everything behind and to come here to give my siblings and I a better life. And so I have my wild days during my teenage years, but I take that very seriously. And every day I try to make my mom, very proud, because I know the sacrifice that she made for us. And you can't take that for granted. And so I work every day. I mean, I just have finished wrapping up. I have, so I'm constantly working. I'm a workaholic. And, but I think it's, it's that need to create things and to be worth something. That for a long time, as a child growing up, thinking, well, I'm illegal, I'm an illegal, undocumented. Right. The fear of not being enough, the process of catching up also, because even though I was very advanced in the science and math, I was struggling with English, and I was struggling with, the other courses. And I always felt like I was behind for some reason. Even though I'm sure, like now looking back, I'm like, well, I was very smart and intellectually I, was pretty savvy and no different than any child that age. But you don't think that, because you're trying to catch up. You wonder, am I dumb? Am I not intelligent enough? Because you don't
comparing
speak the
yourself
language.
to a lot of people around you, and also
not knowing the language too,
and coming to a new country, and like trying to find your place in this big world and diversity. So there's a lot of insecurities that will build up over time, and and it's only natural, and then you just have to break through, and that also use as a motivation, and look where you're at now.
Absolutely. And I think that back then also it wasn't cool to be Latino. It wasn't a good thing. It was, there was a lot. I mean, there's still a lot of discrimination now, but I think back then, I think we kind of come back to that again, right? With the climate where we're at right now. But back then, I just remember thinking, even our parents wanting to assimilate as much as possible to the American culture, and just going through that. I think that it was just very challenging, very, very challenging. And and now I think back in retrospect, I'm like, oh my God, if you have an accent, that means that you know more than one language, right? You're actually, in fact, multilingual, right? And so it's bilingual, rather. You are bilingual. So it's just so fascinating how things shift as you get older, because you understand.
It's the same thing as, like, the curly hair. The curly hair is in.
Oh yeah.
All of a sudden, back in the days, you're not supposed to have that. You know what I'm saying? So it's just everything. It's like the more you realize your own power, own it, then eventually everything will the society and the world will catch on, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, that is great. Now let's make money off of it. Then that becomes the latest thing. But if we would have been doing this from the get-go, we, rather than allowing the world to tell us, like, yeah, it is beautiful, then owning up to it, we would have saw a lot of beautiful things from the beginning. But I digress. Of course, things get better with time, and I'm glad that we're being represented, and we're being pushed out there more, and
more people speaking up about it, and not being silent about it.
Well, yeah, and I think that's very true. I think that now we have also generations that were born here, and so we are braver because we we are part of the culture. We are part of the fabric of this country, and we've contributed a lot. You know, I've been here for 30 something years. I'm sorry. And I just feel like, you know, I've always worked. I've always worked.
Yeah.
No one has ever given me anything, you know, and so I'm very proud about that.
Yeah, I also feel too, like just hearing your story of like your parents, it reminds me of you know, a lot of people, my parents as well, you know, and how I don't know how they don't realize it takes so much bravery and so much courage to do what they did to come from another country over here. Literally, you ask them how much money, oh, like, I only have maybe $100. Like, you know, but then we tell them we're gonna be an actor, a comedian. Oh my God, like it's like, bro, you came to another world with no friends and family, and I'm just going to the audition. Like, it's
because they don't want you to struggle. They don't want us to struggle like they did.
No, I get that, but their struggling is totally different from my struggling, or our struggle as an actor, comedian, whatever. It's totally different. Like, I don't have kids that I'm going to be dying on the line if I don't get this. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. So, but if I could just get, like I always said, like, well, if I could just have 20% of your bravery, I'll be fine in this industry, you know, in my world and where I want to go, because you made a huge sacrifice and risk that you didn't even ponder, you know, about it. Like, until like you got older and you want to reflect it on us. Like, if you only knew what I did,
what I went through.
Right. Well, it's so interesting that you say that, because that's so true with a lot of immigrant children, right? Who came here, their parents sacrificed so much. And of course, I mean, my story, my mom didn't want to hear it. She was like, you want to act? What's that? Like, of course she knew she was being sarcastic, but she's like, we didn't come to this country for you to act. What? Act a fool. You see what happened to you, you know? And so I think that also a part of them, the reason why there's so much pressure on us is that we're probably betting on us, you know, like the next generation. And so,
you're gonna act.
They're like, right. What do you mean? You need to have something solid. And yes, I think part of it is, the big part of it is that they don't want us to struggle. But I also think that, you know, that there is this sacrifice that they made, and maybe for them, you know, in some cases, not in the case of my parents, but in some cases has been life or death, right? That you leave a country because you're being persecuted or because you really don't have anything to eat. And so when you get to this country, you want the best for your children, and you just want them to be, and they also want to be proud. My daughter is a lawyer. My son is a doctor. You know,
No, not even that. My son has an office job with benefits. Like, because to them, that's to them is the American dream, and I get it. You know, you have to put yourself in their shoes, because if they would have landed that, they're like, oh my God, jackpot, because their goal was to just make it over here, be alive, and support their family.
Support your family.
You know, now the generation after that, they're telling them something different. It's like, yeah, you're right, but I'm doing what you're doing, but going after my dream and my goals. You know, this is something that I want to do too. That's equivalent to your dream and goal of coming over here and supporting us and yourself. You know, so it's like you breaking that curse, and then of course, like you said, they see the things that you do and they end up being proud, and they're like, oh wow, like now you show them that there's another way. The office job is fine to support yourself, but there's also another dream, another journey that you can also do too. But they didn't have it because automatically their life became taking care of themselves and their family, providing, you know, which is like they had to put that on hold.
Right, absolutely. I think it wasn't until I auditioned for the Theelena role that my mom finally got it. She's like, oh, okay. Before that, I was sneaking around, you know, taking workshop classes and going into the city without her knowing. Like, she would be working 12 hours a day, and she either thought we were in school or we were at home, and I would take advantage and go and take classes, and you know, eventually she got it, and she was like, oh wow, you know, this is what you've been trying to do, and this is what you've been telling me. And you know, it wasn't until then that she was really on board with me being in this industry, because the other piece of it was that she correlated the entertainment industry to somehow being taken into prostitution, and it's not good, and that whole I guess perception that because a lot of kids, right, they go to Hollywood and they end up in the streets being homeless, all kinds of crazy things, right? People take advantage of them. And so that was always her fear. So finally, I think it was 1997, she came with me to the Theelena auditions in LA, and it was just incredible. It was such an amazing experience, and, got really close. And since then, she's been incredibly supportive of my career and anything that I choose to do. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that as long as I showed her that I was committed, she would support me.
When did
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say when did the spark and the seed for acting and creating and being an artist start for you?
Yeah, I think it was always there for me. I think that when I was in 5th grade, I convinced my teacher to allow us to rehearse during class for a little play that I organized and put together. And I think that that's when I realized that I really love doing this. And we used to take over this closet, this huge closet that was in our classroom. And yeah, it was like early on, 5th grade. But even before that, I was always fantasizing. I was always pretending to be, part of the ensemble of, like, a telenovela or a movie, right? I remember one of my first films that I saw in the theaters was Pedrito Fernández, La de la Mochila Azul.
Oh my.
And I remember thinking, like, oh my God. And then I think the second one was Annie. So it was pretty early on, and this was my first film was in Honduras, and but yeah, I remember convincing the teacher in fifth or 4th grade, and thinking to myself, I can really do this. And back then I was directing. I was like, okay, and I haven't really pursued directing my career, but yeah, definitely storytelling. And just creating and being active. And then in 5th and 6th grade, I was heavily involved in the school plays. In 7th grade, I somehow managed to get into the choir, although I can't sing. And then in the traveling choir, although I can't sing, but I can harmonize if somebody else can sing next to me. So I always make things work,
Yeah.
That's great.
And you dabble with everything.
Yes, absolutely. But then, it wasn't until I moved to LA that I said, well, I was going to auditions. After Theelena, I went into the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which was a big deal because, it's really difficult to get into that school. And then I moved to LA because I was going to be, the big star, that big dream. And I remember going to auditions, and yes, I just had this, like, kind of multicultural face that I've been asked, are you Indian? Are you Filipino? Are you Mexican? And I'm always like, I could be. I never get offended. I'm just like, that's amazing that I can have that kind of look. But then I would go to these auditions and I would open my mouth because I really, didn't think anything as far as like accents. And I would open my mouth and then everybody would say, ooh, you sound like Rosie Perez. I used to be like, oh, no, I don't. I don't know what you're talking about. And then I realized, I'm like, Jules, you have to work on, your accent and just neutralize that. And yeah, that's when I said to myself, you know what? I think I want to produce. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to produce so that I don't have to audition for anyone. And so the idea of producing came about that need of not having to, just be myself and be, whether I was from New York or anywhere else, just be myself and not have to worry about being a specific kind of character, and really taking things into my own hands, right? My future into my own hands.
Relighting your own stuff.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think that that's one thing I've always been, very solution driven. right? If it doesn't work, make it work. And how do you make it work? Well, maybe sometimes it's a matter of taking things into your own hands and creating something. If it doesn't exist, create it yourself. And so that's always been my approach.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I remember you went to producing and now you're involved in stage design and interior design.
Oh, yeah,
how did that flourish? And also working with your husband. What's that like?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was new to me because we were in contact, and then I'm like, wait, she's doing this. This is great.
Absolutely. So I I have been producing. I've casted, and then I ended up working. One of the things that happened to me, I've always been hungry for knowledge. I always wanted to learn, and I think that comes from not knowing how to speak the language and being thrown into a whole new culture. And so when I started producing, I've had some, and I think we all can relate to this, right? Some bad deals where because of lack of knowledge, because I didn't know how to advocate for myself, I've been, screwed up, right? I've been screwed. And I always wanted to learn. So I had an opportunity to work for A&E Networks. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to learn everything there is to know about the other side, like the buyers, what happens once something is, bought and shot and broadcast. Like, I wanted to know that. I wanted to know how the deals went down. Like, who gets what? Why does that person get this? And how it all, happened. And so I started as a temp, actually working for A&E Networks. And at the time, A&E, A+E Networks owned A&E Channel. They owned History Channel. They owned Lifetime, the History en Español, and a few other smaller brands. And I was in that mix, and they were hiring because they were going to launch FYI, which was they were going to tap into the lifestyle.
Oh, okay.
Right. So they were taking the old biography channel and they were rebranding it into a new network that was going to compete with the Food Network, with HGTV, with TLC. And so I found myself in that space, and I was like, well, I never thought about going into reality television. My whole goal was always to be in the scripted world, whether it was movies, whether it was television. And so when I landed at A&E, I had I interviewed for the job, and I got it. And I remember at one point thinking, like, what am I doing here? This is really not what I want to do. But I never forgot that there was a huge meeting, an open, like they used to have. Well, I know that, Alexandra, you've been to the A&E offices. It's a very open space. And I remember the Lifetime, and they had all the programmers and all the developers in one floor, regardless of brand. And I remember, the head of Lifetime at the time, Rob Chernow, saying how reality was not going anywhere. Whoever told you reality was dying, that's not true. Reality is the oil that keeps the engine going. And so a little light bulb went on, and I was like, that's why I'm here. I'm supposed to learn this. And so fast forward, we had a show with Wayfair, and they canceled the show. They brought a lot of the furniture to the headquarters, and they sold it to the employees for ridiculous prices, like lamps for $10, $20, pillows for $5, all kinds of rugs. I mean, it was just crazy. And we were up for a couch, and I called my husband. I actually text him, and he doesn't call me back, or doesn't text me back. And I call him, and I'm like, dude, like, are we on, we're on the market for a couch. I'm like, there's a couch here. And he's like, how much is it? I tell him how much it is. He goes, buy it. Well, I started buying a whole bunch of other stuff. And
I would have done the same thing too.
Right? So when he calls and picks it up, we're supposed to pick it up that Saturday. And we pick it up, and he's like, okay, where's the couch? And I show him the couch, and he's like, and I'm like, okay, and those 2 rugs, and those 4 lamps.
Yeah, it came with the couch. It was a special.
Right.
Buy one, get one. 5.
Right, exactly. I'm like, honey, it was so so cheap. Like there's no way I could. So I remodeled, like not remodeled, but like redesigned my spaces, my living room and my dining room. And I remember going to my cousin's house, and he had just renovated his house. And I was like, you know what I would love to do? I would love to have a stage and design business. And he said to me, all right, guys, 2 weeks from that day, I get a call, and somebody's blowing up my phone. I don't know who it is. My cousin finally texts me. He's like, pick up your phone. Didn't you say you wanted a staging and design business? I'm sending you a referral. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, wait, I meant after my producing career. And I'm like, OMG. This is like, be careful what you wish for, right? Be careful what you wish for, because you might get it. And so I had some ideas. The agent asked me, like, what would you do with this space? He asked me if I was available, and I sent him some ideas. And he said, how much is it? And I was trying to figure it out because, at the end of the day, I had never done this before, but I'm a producer at heart. So I put my producer hat on. I kind of put a budget together, and I said to him, I gave him a price, and he's like, are you sure that that's what it is? And at that moment, I realized, I was like, oh my God, I lowballed myself, right? I was like, well, that's your introductory price. As a matter of fact, full transparency, I am a television executive that has done home shows, and I'm trying to break into this business, and I will give you this price if you bring me more business. And turns out that this guy was a huge deal in the real estate space, and him and I had worked together and done multiple staging. And then I said to my husband, I said, I think we need to incorporate. And he was like, no more businesses, because I had done a bunch of, I'm like Ralph Crampton, who always has a new idea. And I always drag him in. And this man is like, oh my God, like at the beginning of our marriage or us dating, he was all in it. But, now he's almost like, okay, when are we doing again? Like, when are we doing again? I mean, I drive him insane, right? And so I said to him, like, we really need to incorporate. I mean, we're getting all these, I'm doing all this work, and I was doing this simultaneously while I was working at A&E. And so I remember I would get these jobs, and I would go during my lunch break, set it up. My husband, will go with me. He'll be in the apartment, and then he'll wait for the furniture to arrive, and then I would run back to work, and then after work, we'll run back to the location. And it was just insane, to the point that I was just like, you know what, I think I've learned everything that I needed to learn at A&E. I think I'm ready to go and build this company a little bit more, and still with the passion of doing content. But I just saw an opportunity, and I ran. And I think that as entrepreneurs, we need to be able to identify those opportunities and really, run with them. Of course, calculated risks, right? Not just taking risks without really thinking about it, because that's when people lose, their savings and their time. And time is precious, guys. As I get older, I realize that like time is so precious. You can never get time back. So you have to guard that, and you have to really be intentional with what you put your energy and your time in. And so, so the business was, we were getting really busy. But before, when I was pondering whether or not I was going to move and do this, I said to myself, God, like I had a moment with God and myself, and I was like, please, God, like if this is the right choice, send me a sign. Because my husband was like, you leaving your corporate job? No. No. I'm telling you, I'm crazy. And but I'm like, but I'm not happy. Don't you want me to be happy? And he's like, but what are we gonna do? And I'm like, well, I'm sure we'll make it work. No matter what, we'll make it work. And so I remember that was on a Sunday that I asked God to send me a sign. On Tuesday, it was Tuesday. That Sunday, the following Sunday, I get a text from the last agent that I had worked with, and she said, are you sitting down? Our work has been featured in the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
And
Nice.
if that was not a sign, I don't know what else, you know, what other sign. And I just was like, look, we're the feature.
Nice.
I'm like, come on, let's do this. Let's jump to, you know, we're doing well. We get in the business. We're
Mhm.
making money. We're not like, this was the first business that we have not lost money, you
Yeah.
know, because
Plus,
all
that
the other
corporate job will
ventures,
always be there.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I can always go back.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. So yeah, so that was, you know, that was amazing, and we were doing fantastic, and then COVID hit. You
Mm-hmm.
Oh
know,
yeah.
we have been in business for almost 5 years now. But we had, you know, like I said, we had always made money,
Mm-hmm.
and we had kept our costs low,
Mhm.
and our overhead very low, and so we had savings, and we had, you
Yeah.
know, but it's just like now we were rethinking, like, okay, how do we pivot? Like,
Yeah.
how do we move from here
Right.
and continue to be, you know, to be able to,
Producing. Yeah.
Yeah.
produce revenue, and still, you know, and
Well,
still continue to do what we do. And so we've been shifting. We've had very little work since, but what we
Mhm.
have been doing is redoing our infrastructure
mm,
and really putting in those systems that we weren't able to do at the beginning, because we were always like, you know, running,
yeah,
right? We
running
we
and
got
gunning.
busy right away, right? And
So now you
so
have time
now
to
we
like
have been
think
doing
things
all
through.
that,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot is
right,
also, but also
right,
it's like that's the artist and the entrepreneur spirit,
Life
where
too.
life, where like when things, the curveballs hit, you got to figure out what's next, how you're gonna
Mhm.
come throughout this, and you know, COVID, you know, fucked up a lot of things for a lot of people, artists, human beings, with all types, and is how do you jump over this now? How do you
Yeah.
move with this now? You know, and
And how
it's
do you
survival
be
of the
creative with
yeah,
new way of
right.
the new way of life
And
right
I
now? You
think,
know
you
what I
know,
mean?
it's in the beginning, of course, we could look at it as a negative, but we could look at it as a positive, because it just shows us that how much passion that we have to make it through.
Mhm.
You know, all right, this is just something that's in the
absolutely,
way now. How can I overcome this? And I know I can overcome this, but with time, you know, I'm gonna prevail.
And
So,
belief.
mhm,
it's the
Mhm.
human spirit, right?
mhm,
That
Mhm.
survival mode, and really, you know, knowing that no matter what happens, it was going to be okay. You know, I remember thinking when I was going into the city every day, and the hustle and bustle, I remember thinking to myself, like, when is this going to stop? You know, and
mhm,
Mm.
I think back now, like, like how what I thought about then, and I was like, oh my God, like, you know, this whole pandemic, like,
mhm.
literally stopped the whole,
The
not just New York, the whole
Yeah,
world,
world.
yeah,
right? It's like,
Except
it's almost,
Texas and Florida.
yeah. I mean, they
right,
stopped for
right,
like a week, and then they was like, all right,
right.
we're good after this. No, but it
Oh,
shows you.
yeah.
It just
It
shows you there's
does.
a lot of things that's out of your control, right? Like all these
Right.
things. And in hindsight, like let's say, like, you know, we seen it. People in the industry, you know, they do one mistake on social media, something like that, and the higher ups take everything away from them. So in this sense, it was like that for all of
For
us,
everybody. Yeah.
everyone. It was like, whether you want to think it's a conspiracy or whatever, or not, whatever you believe in. At the end of the day, whatever happened with this COVID thing, it just took everything under. It's like under the rug, and everyone just
Mhm.
fell. And it was like, now if you're lucky you have a job, now you don't have it. You're
Mhm.
If you was an actor or whatever, now
Right.
everyone's on pause, everything.
Right.
And it was like, holy
Absolutely.
crap, you had to take that moment to like, to either think, reflect, or if you had that moment already that you was doing, running and gunning, you was rallying yourself even more, you
Yeah.
know, because there's a lot of people that was going through it. People was like, I kind of love this. Other
Mhm.
people was like, now I
I don't
don't
love
want
this.
love this
Yeah.
no more. I want to go. So, you know, there was a lot of different levels and colors throughout
Oh,
this whole
absolutely.
thing that showed us a lot.
Absolutely.
And it also
Absolutely.
didn't take a lot of you can also say like it took stuff away, but it also showed how strong and faithful and that you are, like we are as people, if you keep strong and keep surviving and keep pushing through,
Right.
you know what I mean? It shows your strength and weaknesses.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, it also helped us, like you said, reflect and really think about, you know, for many of us, what our purpose is. You know, my family, we had it really, really tough. My husband, my sister and my husband were hospitalized almost like a day apart from each other. Luckily for my sister, it was not COVID, but we thought it was COVID. She just had a really bad like sinus infection that got out of control. But my husband got diagnosed with COVID, and he was hospitalized for 5 days. My father had been, fighting it. He was home. And when he saw that my husband made it, he thought, well, maybe I would make it too. And unfortunately, like, we lost my dad. In fact, it's going to be a year now, April 29th. And that for me was one of the biggest loss I've ever experienced. I have never experienced that kind of loss. My father and I were really, really close. And, him and I, like, I didn't grow up with him because I came to this country and he was still in Honduras. But then, he came to this country about 18 years ago. And we didn't skip a beat. We were like, all right, we're here now. Like, I want to have a relationship with him. And he wanted to have a relationship with me. I'm like, why not? And, also part of it was forgiveness, right? Because regardless of what happened in the past, whether it was intentional or not, here he was and he wanted to be present. And I yearned for that part of me, because even though I grew up with my stepdad and he had been with my mom forever, I needed my dad. And so it was just crazy, a crazy roller coaster. And then I'm like in the middle of a production, because believe it or not, like, some people were like, all right, we need to work. And I was working on a project with a friend of mine. And when this whole thing happened with my dad, they were like, you don't have to. And I was just like, well, what am I going to do?
Right.
I have two choices. I either, do this and have something to do.
Yeah.
Or not.
Or just stay home depressed and crying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, like, I never experienced that kind of pain. And I remember the day that it happened, I just remember feeling this incredible pain in my stomach that I just wanted to die. I just felt like I was weird, right? Because I have my husband and I have, loved ones, my mom, but it was my dad and I were so close. We used to see each other almost every day. If we didn't see each other, we would speak. And he was just that optimistic person who would always, didn't matter what it was, he'd be like, Julita, ¿cómo van los proyectos? How are the projects going? And he would tell me, like, he was like, you should be running that company, and he would always like, I don't know, say things to me that just made me believe, and just made me believe in, like, human, compassion, because he was really good. He was not only a good father, he was also a good friend and a good, brother. Like, he was always thinking about, because his roommate was his sister. He was always thinking about his sister. And I don't know, I just felt the great loss. But it also made me realize the importance of the relationships that I have now, and those people that are there for me, and the people that really bring something to the table, and those who don't, and it really made me think about, okay, I was like, all right, I'm just going to really choose wisely. And sometimes we want people to be in our lives, but sometimes you just got to let go. And one of the things that I'm doing now, right? One of the things that have worked for me, is like, well, I want this person in my life, but if that person doesn't want to be in my life, I need to see who wants to be in my life. And I just let people, I'm like, let's see how long it takes for this person to call me. And let me tell you, there's been one that took 10 years. And I still haven't heard from that person. I'm like, okay, I guess it wasn't meant to be, right? Because it was the kind of relationship that, you call them and they're really nice to you, and but then they don't make the effort to see you, right? And it's just really, really, like, after this loss, and we had 4 other losses, big losses after that due to COVID. But this one with my dad made me realize how short the amount of time on this earth is so short. Even though it's long, it's short, and it can be taken away any minute. My father was not sick. My father, he was he was 72 years old, but my father looked like he was 60.
Yeah.
And he was in great spirit, he was overall a healthy man. And it just made me realize, like, any given moment,
it could be all gone.
Yep.
I could go.
And all the stuff that we're working hard for, it's what we love to do. Don't get me wrong, but you have this moment. It's like it doesn't matter. There's other things that do matter, more than that. Living, taking care of yourself, your family, and stuff like making sure that time is there.
Yep.
And of course, going after your dreams. That is part of it. But if that's the only thing that's worth something to you, or what you have, then it just showed you that, like, it could be easily taken away, and that doesn't really matter. That's just a part of you, and there's so many other things that you have to realize that's around you that you should be around. And it's, at the end of the day, it's this time in life is, it's cliche, but it is a blessing.
It is a blessing. And really, so I made a promise to myself that I would be present, that wherever I was, I want to be present and really love and show people around me, love, because I think that's very important. As corny and as sappy as that might sound, like, I want to show those around me that I care about them and that my love is it's real, and things are done with grace and love. I mean, I'm a hugger. Being a person who's a hugger, being in this pandemic, I'm like, the elbow, not the elbow.
I know.
And by the way, the elbow is the worst thing that you can give someone, because you know why? Because we sneeze in our elbow.
Oh, that's right.
And so then you're sharing the elbow, and then guess what? You don't know what. And then you grab it, and then and then you sneeze again,
and I use the elbow for the elevator.
I think my elbow is like the cleanest thing, because I take the bus and train every day to work, and I'm like, I'm whatever I'm breathing, because they stopped cleaning those trains. I think my elbow is like cleaner than everything on that train.
It's like, now how you just gotta be like, hi. You can't even
with the foot.
The foot.
Because
our feet are dirty.
It's crazy. It's just so sad, because like it just like it even took away, like, what's that called, a connection, a physical connection that you do with people. Like, you just like, you don't want to be paranoid. You don't want to fall to this fear that the news is always doing. But then again, you're like, you don't know what to do at times. It's like,
and so you're like,
I believe it, because like we all lost people. I was like, I believe it, but I'm like, but I don't know. I think this person was in quarantine. I think I could risk a hug right now. But it's like you're second guessing yourself all the time. It's like, what's right and what's wrong,
Right. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's, playing it smart. Yeah. I have hugged people, I have.
Look, see, we're at that stage, like, I hugged last week. Hugging, well, before it was like, it was a natural thing. Now I was like, 2 weeks ago, I had a nice hug. So it's so weird to say that.
Hugs are
and not feel guilty about it.
I know.
They're so good.
But my husband Alfredo's like, did you just hug that person? I'm like, oh, yes. Oh my God, he's so funny. He's like, but the other piece of that, right, is because we have his mom who lives with us, and
so
he's like, I know. And let me tell you, my mother-in-law didn't go out for a year, and she got COVID. All right, and we don't know how she got COVID. Wow. I got to tell you, it's like the mystery of all mysteries, because we tested ourselves, we're constantly testing ourselves. And as soon as we found out that she got COVID, we immediately tested ourselves. We both came back negative. But it was the funniest thing, because she was so pissed off. Let me tell you, she was like, I want to know who gave me COVID. ¿Quién me dio esto? Yo quiero saber quién me... And I'm like, and I was like, and what are you going to do once you find out? And she's like, I don't know, but I want to know. And I'm like, all right. But it was just so, obviously we were worried, but it was so comical that she was so upset because she's like, how the hell did I get COVID? Being here, like she never comes out. She never comes out.
I heard cases of that too, and I mean, I think
but I've heard that.
I think it's just airborne. I mean, a lot of, I mean, you know, it was airborne. I think it was a mixture of things.
But also,
airborne,
like you
touch,
could be
germs, everything.
You could be a character, like you there's a word for it, but like you can be someone who gives it to people, but you don't get affected.
No, but no one was around her.
No one, we didn't test it positive. Like that's if you test positive. But I think we did order food one time.
The delivery guy. Or the food.
Yeah,
it could be the food too.
Yeah, everybody was to the point where they was cleaning their mangoes and pears from the supermarket, you know, like.
But I used to do that before COVID.
Spraying their pizza with Lysol, like we was going crazy, like knee deep. I think at one point I was like, yo, this mango's gonna be the death of me. I'm tired cleaning these damn mangoes, these damn lettuce.
I'm having this damn mango. And nobody's gonna take my mango away.
But it also like showed people like things that you should be doing. You should wash your hands. You know what I mean? You should take your clothes off when you come home from the train. Don't you know what I mean?
God, yes,
don't sit on your couch if you sat on the train. Like I don't get that.
Husband, let me tell you, everybody used to think I was crazy because at one time I saw a news where there were these bugs in the train. They would jump from people to people, right? And so I never forgot that. So every time I used to come from work, I used to take off my clothes and put it in a plastic bag and wrap it, put it in the, make sure that if there was any bugs in there that would die, that would suffocate them, right? And so when this whole thing happened, I'm like, of course it makes sense. Like I've been doing this, since I started going into the city.
The moment you started seeing everybody dirty on the train.
Oh my goodness, yes. It's So I don't understand, I mean, and then I remember, going into work bathrooms, and kind of waiting to see who was not waiting, but be in the bathroom and they would finish and they would not.
A lot of there's a lot of people that don't wash their hands.
I want to know because I'm not shaking anyone's hand.
You know what? I'm happy there's no more handshakes, and I'm glad we wear masks because I've seen a lot of dirty people that like you be in the bathroom and don't wash your hands. I'm fine with no handshakes. And I'm fine wearing a mask, going to train, going to bus. We should do that more. We should do that on the regular because there's a lot of dirty motherfuckers out there that they don't. They ain't telling you they dirty.
Especially when you sick, put a mask on.
They portraying that they clean, but they dirty.
Yes. Isn't that something else? I'm like, why are we having? I mean, I was just so surprised at how many people do not wash their hands.
It's disgusting.
It's just this. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, I'm always. I mean, I'm not a germaphobe, but I do,
You're conscious of like,
I'm
I have
so
yeah.
I mean, if you clean your butt, especially a woman, and it like goes down, freaking wash your hands.
Right, exactly. Or those nails, girl.
You know what? I'm not even gonna get.
Yeah, that's true.
So, Julia,
that's always the question. I'm like, how does she do it?
Yeah.
So, Julia, we got to know your story, and now we're gonna go to the next segment.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And it's about nails.
All about nails that you haven't washed. So our next segment is called Rapid Fire. So it's 4 questions, and it's whatever comes to mind. So the first question is, what has been your biggest disappointment?
My biggest disappointment, I don't know. That's I think that's been several. I think one is difficult. I think there's been a lot of disappointments. I think that, losing friends that you love and respect because, I don't know, a deal went wrong or because we didn't get to an agreement or agreed on something that was good for both parties.
Yeah.
I think that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's a good one.
What single thing would improve the quality of your life? Money's not an option in this question.
My health.
Nice. Next question.
The next section is, what do you consider your greatest achievement?
I think I think it's hard. That's another hard question. I think I try to be grateful for the many things that, have come to my life. And I think that there's been a lot of great achievements. I think, the like graduating from college. I think, finding someone who loves me so unconditional, having my mom and having a great relationship with her as a daughter, that's a great achievement. Having a great relationship with my sister. I feel that those are so important. That goes beyond, you can have all the money in the world, you can have the biggest house, the luxury cars, but if your soul and your relationships are not in a good place, then nothing matters.
Last question is, what is the most important lesson life has taught you?
I think that I have to continue to apply compassion, when interacting with people. I think that, life has taught me that I need to be a better listener, and I am trying to do that every day.